They called him the Drifter, not because he wandered, but because he could vanish into the Montana Badlands like smoke from a campfire, quoting old frontier tales while outdrawing outlaws from Texas to the Dakotas. Luke Harlan could spin a yarn about vigilante justice while landing a shot dead center at 40 paces. What the wanted posters never mentioned was that he was heading back to Dusty Ridge, Montana, after 6 long years, armed with proof to clear his name and to reclaim the heart of the woman who'd never stopped believing in him. The woman is now wed to the town marshal. On Christmas Eve, 1887, as a blizzard howled through the Rockies and the saloon lanterns flickered like dying stars, Luke Harlan rode into that drafty old chapel, his steel-gray eyes locking onto her like a hawk spotting prey. What happens when buried secrets claw their way to the surface? Buckle up, this ride's about to get rough. Everyone in Dusty Ridge swore Marshal Elias Whitaker and his wife Emily had the picture-perfect union. You'd hear it at the general store, over whiskey at the Rusty Spur, or during potluck suppers after Sunday service. Elias Whitaker, pushing 50, with a salt and pepper mustache and a badge that commanded respect, tamed this booming mining town from claim jumpers and cattle thieves. His bride Emily, just 30, schooled in Chicago, daughter of the late rancher Josiah Kane, who'd left more IOUs than cattle when he kicked the bucket. Elias had settled those debts the morning after their vows, no questions asked. Emily ran the little schoolhouse, teaching the miners' kids their ABCs and arithmetic. She chaired the women's league, tended to the ailing, and kept their clapboard homes spotless with doilies on the tables and wildflowers in vases come spring. Elias provided handsomely. A fine house on Front Street, dresses from catalog orders, even novels mailed from Billings. But if you paid attention really paid, you'd catch how Emily's laugh rang a bit hollow, how she'd linger on the veranda at dusk, staring at the stagecoach trail snaking west, or how Elias would grip her arm just firm enough when some cowboy lingered too long in conversation. A lady's duty is hearth and home, not chasing rainbows, he'd say, and Emily would dip her head, playing the devoted spouse she'd molded herself into. The trouble with gilded bars is that the soul inside still yearns for open skies. Elias had good intentions. He really did. He'd buried his first wife to fever down in Kansas, helpless as she faded while he chased bandits across the plains. When he met Emily Young, orphaned, scrambling to salvage her pa's legacy, saw his shot at safeguarding someone precious. He just never bothered asking if she craved that cage. For days before Christmas, Elias declared he'd head to Helena for official business urgent talks with the territorial governor. He'd return after the new year. "You'll manage fine," he told Emily, pecking her cheek like a kindly uncle. "Mrs. Harlow from across the way will look in." Emily smiled, waved from the stoop as his wagon faded into the snowdrifts. Little did she know, 700 miles south, the man she'd once pledged her forever to was pouring over a wire that would upend it all. Little did she know Luke Harlan had unearthed the truth to exonerate himself. Little did she know he was already barreling north. The Christmas Eve gathering was jammed wall to wall, folks shoulder to shoulder in wool coats, kids squirming in starch collars, men doffing their Stetsons as Pastor Harlan Luke's own king climbed the pulpit. Emily perched in her spot, second row center, her emerald satin gown a gift from Elias feeling like a straitjacket in the stuffy air. She waved her prayer book like a fan, trying to latch onto the homily about forgiveness and fresh starts. That's when she spotted him, a silhouette lurking by the back wall, half shrouded in overcoats and scarves. Tall, sinewy, a battered hat shading his face, but not enough to mask those piercing gray eyes that had stared in her nightmares and daydreams for 6 endless years. Her pulse skipped. The book tumbled to the floorboards. Luke Harlan, alive, right here. He looked forged in fire, now leaner, tougher, with creases fanning from his eyes like canyons. A jagged scar sliced from his temple to his chin, stark against his sun-baked skin. But those eyes? Unchanged, pulling her under like a riptide. Memories crashed over her. Lazy summers by the creek at 16, his fingers weaving through her locks at 18, that frantic night before he fled, backed against the stable wall, vowing eternity under a harvest moon. "I'll return for you, Emily," he'd murmured against her mouth. "Once I prove I'm no killer." That was 6 years back, 6 years of silence, of rumors he'd met his end in some dusty showdown, of steeling herself to be Elias Whitaker's partner instead of Luke Harlan's flame. Now he stood there, and Emily's fragile world spun off its axis. Their gazes collided across the throng. He tipped his brim, a whisper of a nota hello, a dare, an oath. Emily's fingers clutched her necklace, her wedding band burning like hot iron. When she blinked, he was gone, melted in the night like a phantom, like frost on a window pane, like every hope she'd entombed. But she knew, gut deep, Luke Harlan was back in Dusty Ridge. The old Harlan homestead hunkered on the town's outskirts, boards warped and gray as forgotten dreams. Emily had no business going the Reno, right, saddling her pony before dawn, no excuse packing a hamper of charity goods for the needy families on Christmas morn. But she went. He was there, lounging on the creaky steps like time had looped back. 6 years dissolved like mist in the sun. "Hello, Emily." His timbre was gravel now, edged with the wild. It rippled through her, unrelated to the biting chill. "Luke." She swung down, knees wobbling. "They said you were gone for good. Everyone swore it." He rose, and she clocked the changes, broader in the shoulders, pistols slung low on his belt-matched Remingtons with notch handles, tools of a man who'd hunted bounties to survive. Folks spin tall tales. She ached to rush him, to bury herself in his arms like the girl she'd been. Instead, she froze by her mount, reciting her vows in her head, her husband's faith, the existence she'd pieced from ruins. "Why return now?" she breathed. Luke fished a creased paper from his duster, Motion's deliberatious survivor who'd learned to outthink death. "Because I tracked down the real murderer of Ben Harlow." The name slammed her like a gut punch. Ben Harlow, the storekeeper, found gutshot in his shop 6 years prior to the slaying pinned on Luke, forcing him to bolt before a vigilante noose. "Chase leads through 4 states, Luke went on, and I uncovered Moria web bigger than one killing." He passed her the sheet. Their fingertips grazed, and time folded in on itself. Bank ledgers, freight bills, sealed missives. Ben stumbled on a graft scheme. Luke explained, inching nearer, his scent of saddle leather and pine sap flooding her senses. Officials in 5 counties pocketing kickbacks, rigging bids. Ben aimed to blow the whistle. Emily's grip shook as she scanned names she knew, some that turned her stomach. "So they silenced him," she murmured, "and scapegoated you." Luke's face hardened. A drifter kid makes a tidy diversion, keeps eyes off the big fish. She met his stare, seeing the toll. The burden of 6 years evading, transforming from her soft-hearted bow into this edged blade. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have fought harder." Known you couldn't. His palm cupped her face, tender as dawn. "You didn't know. You're the sole believer who kept me going." The air crackled, charged. 6 years ached distilled to this instant. "We can't," she said, even as she melted into him. "I know," but he held fast. 2 days on, Elias still in Helena, the front street house loomed like a mausoleum, echoes and gloom and ghosts. Emily couldn't shake Luke's proofs, those familiar names gnawing at her. That night, she resolved. Elias stashed his files in a bolted desk drawer. Official matters, he'd claim, none of her concern. Tonight it was. The key hid behind a wall panel in their chamber. She'd found it dusting ages ago, tucked the secret with her quiet defiances. The lock snicked open. Inside, dispatches, reports, a fat dossier labeled Harlow case closed. Her pulse thundered as she flipped it. Elias's jottings, testimonies, exhibits, and clipped rearward, a roster of leads he'd been commanded to drop. Matching Luke's list exactly. Digging for gold, Emily whirled, heart seizing. Luke filled the doorway, snow dusting his coat. Our kitchen door unlatched. He stepped in, sealing them alone. Risky, Emily. Any varmint could stroll right in. A smirk ghosted his lips. I'm no varmint. He neared, and she felt the isolation keenly, a lamplight carving shadows on his rugged features. Her chemise flimsy as gossamer. Unearth anything? He nodded at the desk. Elias probed, but got shut down. She whispered. He's clean, Luke. No dirt on him. Relief washed Luke's face. Thank heavens. Couldn't stomach you hitched to a crook. Emily nodded. Elias has flaws, but graft ain't one. Luke leaned for the file, body brushing hers' aroma of soap, hide, and frost dizzying her. His arm pinned her lightly to the wood. Her breath came short. You ought to leave, she hissed. If Elias rides back, not tonight. His spare hand wove into her loose tresses. Emily. She pivoted, pressing flush to him, his heartbeat matching her frenzy. This was lunacy, yet 6 years' void scream for closure. Tell me to go, he rasped, breath hot on her ear. Say it, and I'm dust. But words failed, air thinned. Fire glow lit his face, the hardened gunslinger and her lost love entwined. Her palms flattened on his shirt, feeling warmth, a fresh scar above his heart. You're scarred, she murmured, tracing it. Mended now. His hold on her hip tightened, drawing her in. Wounds fade with time. Inches apart, his gray eyes flecked with silver, breath mingling. One tilt, one yield. I'm wed, she choked out. I know. His brow met hers. He quaked. Lord, I know. But facts and fire ward in, fire blazed hotter where Luke Harlan burned. Hooves thundered outside riders, a posse closing fast on Front Street. They sprang apart like scalded cats. Emily clutched her throat. Through the drapes, torch flares, shadows leaping. Hi! But Luke drew his irons smooth as silk. Marshall's crew, he growled, peeking. Someone spotted me. Terror gripped her. The pantry there's a trapdoor to the crawl space. Luke shook his no. If they sniff me out, your name's mud. Won't drag you down. Hooves halted, boots stomped the porch. Emily Whitaker. Open up territorial warrant. Luke framed her face. Whatever they spout, you never saw me. Swear it. I can't swear. I won't let you bleed for my ghosts. Pounding rattled the door any second. It'd splinter. I swear, she breathed. He kissed her brow swift, soft. Farewell. And he slipped out the rear into the gale. Mrs. Whitaker, apologies for the hour. Deputy Marshal Wade Harlano stood hat in hand, but eyes like flint. Behind, 8 gunmen in the drifts. Hunting a ghost. Luke Harlan. You recall him from before your nuptials. Emily cinched her wrap, voice steady as stone. Luke Harlan? But he's long dead. Alive and lethal, ma'am. Harlan scanned inside. Mind a peek? Sighting matches him nearby. No choice. She stepped aside. Though she knew everyone ditched been Luke's sweetheart once. Whispers dogging her wedding for months. The men rampaged, flipping chairs, raiding closets, combing rooms. Emily tailed, pulse roaring, bracing for the yell of discovery. None came. Fresh brew. A deputy sniffed the kettle. Sleepless night. Emily shot back. Coffee steadies me. Harlan eyed her in the glow. Jumpy for an innocent lady. 8 armed intruders at midnight. Tense a rattle. Harlan's grin chilled. Luke Harlan's wanted for murder and sedition. Aiding him, accessory ropes end. The warning hung heavy. Emily squared up. Lucky I ain't seen him then. They cleared out half an hour later, but Harlan station guards. For safety, he tipped his brim. Emily held till their lights faded, then crumpled, quivering. Luke out in the freeze. Prey for wolves human, and beast chase for truths that scorched the mighty. Names in Elias's file. Fat cats with pull, who could sick deputies on inconvenient facts, who'd slaughter to bury dirt. Luke faced them solo, with grit and guns. Unless she stepped up. The notion terrified, but as Emily huddled in her flawless parlor, in her flawless abode, donning the flawless facade Elias had funded, she snapped. Enough perfection. Dawn broke icy and sharp. Emily donned her finest crimson wool, the one that lit her hazel eyes. If torching or standing, might as well dazzle. The derelict Harlan spread, crouched amid furs and echoes. The deputies tailed discreetly. Let him charity rounds for the destitute, pure Christian deed. She found Luke in the barn, currying a midnight Mustang as mean as its master. He turned, weariness etched deep. Shouldn't be here. Neither should you. She unpacked her bundle. Garb, bandages, and crucially, Elias's notes she'd scribbled pre-raid. Luke gawked at the pages, awe-dawning. Emily, this topples half the territory's brass. If they trace it to you, they'll string me up. Aware. He strode over, seized her hands. Why gamble all? She held his gaze, this shaper of her soul. Boy and battler fused. 6 years back, I was 24, terrified. Let them hound you off without a stand for you, for us. Voice stealing. Not repeating that. Fire kindled in his eyes, faith, fury. His clasp firmed. Emily. She hushed him. More. Wired Helena this mornto the governor's office, not Harlan's cronies. Reinforcements by New Year's. Luke paled. You don't get a thieves' snake strike first, erase threats. Then we strike smarter. Emily paced, mind-whirring years honing Elias's domain, now weaponized. Town Hall, tomorrow New Year's bash at the chapel. Whole ridge there. Emily, what? She wheeled, and Luke spied resolve he'd missed. The rancher's air, tough as nails. Time dusty ridge hears it raw. She closed in, scenting his pulse. Need your backup, Luke. No fleeing this round. The dusty ridge, chapel-brimmed, on New Year's Eve 1887, like the whole territory crammed in. Lanterns swung, casting cheer on folks in Sunday finery. Emily front row, prim as ever but ticker-pounding. She eyed the side entrance. Luke's cue, if he braved the madness, if he bet on her gamble. Pastor Harlan ascended. Brethren, we toast years close and dawn's promise. But progress demands reckoning past wrongs. Emily rose, silk whispering. Pastor spot on. Voice rang clear. Wrongs beg airing, fictions demand truth. Whispers surged. Mrs. Cain Elias's neighbor gasped. Deputy Harlan in the rear stiffened. Emily, the pastor began, but she advanced. 6 years ago, this bird swallowed a whopper. Luke Harlan gunned Ben Harlow cold. Swallowed cause easy safer than grilling the mighty. Side door creaked. Luke entered. A collective gasp sucked air. He cut a figure. Towering, shadowed. Lethal irons low. Grays sweeping for peril. But Luke Harlan slew no one. Emily pressed, gaining steam. Ben died, sniffing corruption, and our governance died, to muzzle his expose on thieves bleeding us dry. Harlan bolted up, pawing his piece. Mrs. Whitaker, you're unhinged. Sit. Reckon not. Luke's baritone sliced. He advanced in delight. Townsfolk gaped at the legend reborn. Ladies speaking, listen. Harlan's boys shifted, fingers itching but Luke's draw blurred, barrels locking. Steady, gents. House of God mind manners. Emily brandished copies aloft. Proof. Ledgers, manifests, wires twixt officials and tycoons across 6 counties. Ben unearthed them, they plugged him. Chapel erupted. Shrieks, shouts, wails. Harlan lunged for iron. Crack Luke's shot spun him. Gun clattering, shoulder blooming red. Hill meant for trial. Harlan's crew froze. Hand skyward, no stomach, facing the myth. Now, Luke drawled, steady. Who fancies hearing how you've been fleeced blind these 6 years? 2 hours. Recitals of dates, dollars, names, gasps mounting. Pilfer taxes, rig mines, kids' future siphoned. Endgame. Last sheet down, queries quenched. Pastor rose. Appears my nephew's COULDN this town owes deep. Luke sheathed, scanned the condemners. No sorries needed. Just justice. The Northern Pacific whistle pierced the Montana flats as Emily Harlan freshly sauce-stewed platform side with valise and hopeful heart. Graft hearings spanned 4 months. 14 indicted, 10 jailed, and fortunes refunded to the robbed. Deputy Harlan rotted a dozen years in pen time to mull greed. Elias took revelations roughly, but not as feared. Night, he rolled home to chaos, and he listened stone-faced in the parlor. "I clipped your wings thinking of safety," he admitted. "That ain't love, and Milithat's cowardice." Split was amicable, gracious. Elias retained home, and Badgeridge needed his core goodness, misguided though. Emily claimed her dowry, Pa's locket, Ma's gown, liberty to forge ahead. Luke, absolved, snagged a federal deputy jig in terms. His picks for posts, beats, life. Bound for Oregon now, where timber camps sought tutors and straight shooters for order, where the Columbia rolled vast toward untamed horizons. "Set," Luke queried, clasping her hand as the boarding rang. Emily glanced back at Dusty Ridge, the shed skin then at her scarred redeemer, unbroken. Been set 6 years. They climbed aboard westbound, Emily and her drifter trading yesterday's specters for tomorrow's vows. The West thrived on rebirth, some just claimed him late. What do you think, should Emily have risked it all for love and justice, or played it safe in her marriage? Drop your take in the comments below. Love hearing your stands and views.